Hello everyone, Step 2009 here, and welcome to another video. This year is the anniversary of 5 Thomas films, one of them being The Adventure Begins, which came out in 2015, which was 10 years ago this year, and in this video, I will be talking about how well this film has held up after 10 years, and just anything I especially liked and wanted to talk about. So let's get into it. The first time I ever saw this film was when I was on a short holiday in a flat next to Walmer Castle. I found it on YouTube. I was about 6 at the time, and I'm pretty sure that it was already past my bedtime, but I watched it anyway. Anyway, onto the film. The film starts with this lovely shot of the island of Sodor. You may have noticed that the music accompanying this shot is actually a revised version of the Welcome to the Island of Sodor theme. And hang on, why is James red here in this shot of Gordon going through Kelsthorpe? He's supposed to have black paint in this film, which is a reference to the first Railway series book he appeared in, which is also accurate to the LMS livery he would have worn before he arrived on Sodor. Now, something I don't really like here is that all of the engines have numbers. They're not supposed to at this time. However, the law has slightly been changed here, so it's okay. Something that I absolutely love about this film is that the soundtrack is actually a remake of the original soundtrack from the classic series. Now, something that doesn't really line up here is the picture of Topham and Dowager Hat in the Fat Controller's office. If this film takes place several decades before the CGI series, then why is Dowager Hat still old? Hang on, why is that truck moving by itself? I think I should mention the animation in this film. This film is where the animation for the CGI series peaked. The lighting was now just right compared to Series 18. A lot of CGI has aged pretty poorly over the years. Series 12, I'm looking at you, but after 10 years the animation for this film has actually held up really well. Now for Thomas's introduction. I love it. When James asks him where he's from and Thomas says Brighton, this is a lovely reference to the real E2s actually being built in Brighton. And then Thomas says that that's where all the best tank engines come from. I mean, both Thomas and Stepney came from Brighton, so I guess that's true. Now, something else that's a bit weird is when the narrator is describing Thomas's short and stumpiness, the order he says the engine parts is different to what they were in the book. I suppose this was done just to make it easier for the camera, but it's still weird though. Now, Thomas himself. He is painted in a green livery. This is very inaccurate. The E2s would have had black paint. I think I heard that the green is supposed to be a reference to the original 1942 Thomas, but it looks nothing like it. Also, the number 70 is inaccurate. It's a reference to the fact that this film came out for the 70th anniversary of the Railway series, but the real engine that Thomas was based on was most likely number 105, but at least it still says LBSC on his sides. Something else I love is when James says, and here comes the fat and Edward corrects him and says the Topham Hat, just to make sure he doesn't get the wrong influence on his first day. And speaking of that, it's a bit strange that Thomas arrived on Sodor after engines 2 to 5. In the book, Thomas and Edward were supposed to be the first, and the others joined later. But hey, different canons. I also love the new versions of the song's really useful engine and troublesome trucks in this film. Just a slight continuity error, I don't really like how Timoshed's had 7 berths instead of 6 in this film, which is what it's supposed to be at this point. And also that Henry is in his new shape. I suppose that this was the film that proved that models and CGI are different canons. But something strange is that the sad story of Henry looks different to what it was in Blue Mountain Mystery. Also in the sad story of Henry, it's interesting that James is the engine who tries to push Henry out, because in the Railway series, a red engine tries to push Henry out of the tunnel that looks like James, but this wasn't James, because he hadn't actually arrived on Sodor yet at this point. Another thing that proves this to be a separate canon is that we see Thomas being repainted at the Sodor Steamworks. I love the continuity here that we don't see Victor and Kevin. This could have been a very easy mistake that could have happened if this special was written by Sharon Miller. Something that people have been talking about since this film first came out is the red lining on Thomas's bunker. He had it up until Series 3 and then lost it, and regains it in this film and has it in all future episodes. This makes some people believe that Series 19 to 24 is a separate canon to the entire show prior, but I'm not too sure about this. I also love the coffee pots here. I love that the crew chose to bring the coffee pots from the lore of the Railway series into the actual show. In both previous versions of Thomas and the Breakdown Train, we never actually see James derail, we just hear the call and see him off the rails later. They did a whole chase for him for dramatic purposes in this film, and to be honest, I actually prefer it this way. At the end of the film, there's a bit of foreshadowing for the cancelled sequel to this film, and I really wish this came out. The film ends with the CGI transforming into a Railway series style illustration, and the music accompanying the credits is in actual illustrations from the Railway series. This is one of my favourite endings to a Thomas film ever. This film is a fantastic modern adaptation of the first 2 Railway series books. However, the geography makes it feel much more like Series 1. In the book, Thomas was station pilot at Vickerstown, but in Series 1 and The Adventure Begins, he's the pilot at Knapford. And in Thomas and the Trucks, he races down the hill and arrived at Wellsworth in the book, but goes from Knapford to Maron in both Series 1 and The Adventure Begins. But overall, despite its flaws, this film is amazing. It is one of my favourites. It has definitely held up well over 10 years. As I mentioned earlier, there are quite a few other anniversaries for Thomas films this year, and I'd like to cover all of them each in their own video like this. And with that, I want to thank all of you for watching, see you in the next video, and goodbye for now.